How 5G ready is India to have a formal launch or rollout of the spectrum by March of next year?
Thank you very much for having me here. 5G spectrum, we have a regulatory structure. In that regulatory structure, there is a very extensive process of consultation with the industry. That consultation process is in its final laps. We should expect the regulators' report by middle of March, end of March. In parallel, everything that needs to be done for conducting the auction process, that is happening. So by end of March, we would be ready with the everything that is required for the auction process. We expect the auction process to be completed by somewhere near July, August. And simultaneously, the industry is getting ready for equipment, in terms of experimental rollout of 5G, in terms of which are the cities in which they'll start the priority rollout. Yeah.
And would the rollout, would the auctions be available? Would the auctions essentially be open for all and sundry? Because there were reports suggesting that India had reservations about Huawei participating in the auctions.
So auction participants are telecom service providers, not the equipment manufacturers, right?
That's right, sir. But Huawei is going into the 5G space as well in a big way, despite it having its presence in equipment manufacturing in India.
Okay, so equipment manufacturing and the software services which are needed, India has a very good, well thought through, trusted equipment regime, trusted telecom equipment regime. Any company, I wouldn't take any names here, any company which basically gets qualified through that trusted process, those companies will be able to provide their equipment to the telecom service providers who need the equipment.
Minister, the point here being that a lot of the 5G conversation these days is being held in the context of considering the technology not simply as a commercial and lifestyle digital improvement to what we've already got, but also some are framing it as a national security risk. Would you see it that way?
Yes, we in India see telecom equipment and telecom services as a strategic service from the point of view of national security. And that's why we have developed and rolled out in a very transparent way a trusted equipment regime. That's what I was referring to. Any company which qualifies as per the trusted equipment regime can then participate in the Indian market.
Okay. Expand for us then, please, a little bit more about the budget and the government policy positioning on digital as future technology and as a supporting core pillar of India's development.
Okay, so over the last few years, India has developed a very unique model of public-private partnership in digital technologies. I'll give a very good example. The example is the UPI, which is Unified Payments Interface. Now, the public platform has been prepared by the government. All sorts of private sector stakeholders, like the banks, more than 270 banks have joined it. A large number of startups, a large number of fintech companies, they have all joined it because this is an open platform. It is available to everybody. It can interact with any other platform. So that's a model which has worked out very well in the country, because the initial risk which private sector would find difficulty in taking, that risk is mitigated by the government, and then the private sector comes in and builds the applications which are needed by the people. So similar models are getting developed. Similar platforms are getting developed in the education center, in health sector, in agriculture, in logistics. So these are all going to be open platforms. And this strategy is working out very well because it reduces the risk and it pulls in a large number of people into the ecosystem.
Sure. How are you thinking about the pricing of the 5G waves, sir, at this point, and also the amount that you're looking to raise? given the situation with the Indian telecom companies, where obviously, they're sitting on a lot of debt?
So it wouldn't be proper for me to comment on the pricing at this point of time, because regulator is an independent regulator. Their consultation process is going on in the final laps, as I said. What I would like to put is that last year in September, the government rolled out a series of regulatory reforms that has really brought a change in the Indian telecom sector. The sector feels much more comfortable in the sense that, yes, the entire regulatory regime, which used to be cumbersome, is out now. So today, for example, if you want a permission for setting up a new tower, it can happen in few hours. What used to take a few months now can happen in few hours. So that's the kind of change which is happening. And the telecom sector the participants come and share with me that these reforms have brought a huge change, and we are working on many more new reforms. How do we make the Indian telecom sector regulatory setup at a global benchmark? That's the target Prime Minister has given us.
Minister, can we talk a little bit about crypto? I'm not sure to what extent the new digital currency and the new laws on taxation of crypto impact your portfolio per se. But just in terms of a general sense of what the digital future holds in terms of crypto and blockchain technology from your perspective.
So you're right, it doesn't hold, this is not within my portfolio. This basically comes in the finance minister's portfolio. The country has taken a very decisive way forward. Legal tender, currency, crypto as a legal tender can only be done by the government, by the central bank. It cannot be done by a private party. That's a very clear, decisive thing which we have taken. Second, India has decided to roll out a digital rupee. In what shape, what form it will come, Reserve Bank of India would be the right organization to comment. So I think let's see how it pans out.
What about regulations, sir, when it comes to social media companies in India? Of course, there was this framework which was set up a few quarters ago, where a grievance officer was supposed to oversee, what happens in terms of these platforms regulating misinformation, disinformation. Where do things stand on that front? How successful has that exercise been, and what can we expect as steps forward in this direction?
So that's an excellent question. The framework that we rolled out a few quarters ago has worked out very well. Almost all the large social media intermediaries, as we call them, the platforms, they have complied with the framework, and it has worked out quite well. Because, so what was that framework? That framework was primarily that there should be self-regulation by large media companies, social media companies. Second, there should be a mechanism by which, if there is a grievance, if there is something going wrong, then we should be able to reach out to the companies, and the companies should be able to address that grievance in a set period of time, in very transparent and a defined way. That was the set of regulations. Now, that has helped us, but is it enough? I think a consensus is emerging that the ease with which people can put content on social media, which can then create law and order situations, can create acrimony against some sections of the society, that needs to be further regulated. That's a consensus which is emerging. And I think we will hold consultations with the industry and come up with slightly more a slightly better way of making the social media more accountable.
Do you see things having changed significantly in the past few years with the social media emergence? Because, India's been grappling with this problem, even with WhatsApp. I mean, WhatsApp being one of the major platforms for communications that has been seen to be a threat previously as well. How has the thinking evolved on this process?
Excellent question. In fact, this is something which, when I interact with my counterparts in other geographies, this is exactly the question that so many other societies are also grappling with. India, the problem becomes even more difficult because the number of languages is huge. The number of scripts is huge. So with that as the construct, for social media also to find out what's good, what's not good, what is supposed to be put on a public platform, that also becomes quite difficult. So that's so on the one hand, the way social media has grown, it has given a huge platform for people to express themselves, bring out excellent innovations, put them on the in the public view so that other people can join, can interact. So that's yes, like everywhere. Simultaneously, there is a other sector which basically spreading fake news, then kind of putting up hate speech. All that stuff is also happening. So that's the point which we need to keep our society safe, make the media accountable, make sure that there is a balance between freedom of expression and social accountability.
I also want to, discuss a bit about India's plans when it comes to plugging the supply chain issues, the supply chain gaps. The government is, of course, outlining $5 billion under the PLI scheme for electronics manufacturing. I'm also given to understand that actually under the India Semiconductor Mission, a CEO, CTO, and a CEFO, a team is being put in place to ensure that objective is met. Minister, what is the plan there? How does India see its position in global chip supply chains and also domestically meeting that challenge for its own manufacturers?
So I'm very happy to share with the audience that the response to our semiconductor policy, which was approved by the Union Cabinet on 15th December last year, and we started rolling out the application process from 1st January onwards. It is just about a month and a few days. The response has been superb. What's the difference between our approach and many other countries' approach, which the industry pointed out to us, is that our focus on talent, our focus on creating, developing, preparing 85,000 semiconductor engineers, that has been highly appreciated. And the second thing which the industry has liked is that instead of just focusing on silicon fab, we have really brought out the policy and capex support for compound semiconductors, for design ecosystem, for ATMP, the packaging part of it. So we see very good response. The application process is on. We hope that very soon we should be in maybe max about 3 months time frame. We should be able to complete the evaluation process and start rolling out this very significant strategic initiative in the country. And also our electronics manufacturing is today $75 billion US. From the interactions with the industry, it clearly comes out that we are growing at something like 26% CAGR basis, and looks like we should be touching $250 to $300 billion in coming 5 years.
Minister, we've talked a lot about the second half, I suppose, of your portfolio designation, the principal term in your title being Railways Minister. Tell us about the future for railways. India is committed to being the world's biggest green railway, and rail is obviously still a major part of the activities there. How is that expenditure? How is that development? How is the future looking for that industry?
Last 7 years, Indian Railways has seen a major transformation in terms of passenger experience, in terms of upgrading the infrastructure, in terms of laying new railway lines. The capital investment in railways has it has been increasing. So in the last ongoing fiscal, which is fiscal 22, the investment has been $29 billion US. Is that enough? $29 billion is a large sum, but is that enough for a country which has 1.3 billion population and a network which spans throughout the country? It's a huge country. We have created structures to absorb this capital investment, right? Now we are kind of ramping up the investment cycle. So the coming fiscal, the capital investment we are going to make is about $31 billion. And going forward, this is going to increase significantly first. So that's the first part of the story. The second part of the entire strategy is totally new generation of train sets. In 2017, we started changing the technology. 2019, the results came out. Our first own developed in India and made in India train set of 180 kilometers per hour. It has worked out fabulously, fantastic performance. Sure. So now we are scaling it up in a very, very significant way, like almost 150 train sets a year kind of thing. This budget, 400 train sets were approved by the parliament. So that's a hugely transforming experience. Sure. The third part of this strategy is to redevelop the stations. The stations were constructed like 50, 60 years back, and many of them are like even 70, 80, 100 years back. There's a totally new change which is happening in railways from that front. Yeah.
Which is so encouraging to hear, right? So it's so encouraging to hear, Minister, that, so much capex is going in building connectivity, in building the railway network in India. That would require more job creation for the sector. How do you then marry it with the headlines that we're getting on how jobs have been scaled back from 18,000 to 12,000 now, and the kind of, obviously, pushback this news has received from people affected?
There is no pullback of jobs. I don't know where you saw that headline. The railway sector, first part is the government and second part is the industry which supports the railway. Together, the estimated number of jobs in the railway sector is 2 crore, which would be 20 million, right? Yeah, that would be...
Yeah, you're right. 20 million is 2
correct.
crore.
So, yeah, that's 20 million jobs, right? In the railway, on the railway roads itself, we have 1.2 million people working on railways roads. What you saw and what we are showing here was it's the largest recruitment drive for Indian Railways, where the number of applicants were, can you believe, 12.5 million people. So there was a grievance of the candidates who were participating in the recruitment process. We have handled it very sensitively and we are addressing that grievance. And in fact, the students are quite satisfied with the response that we made.
So suffice to say that you're addressing the issue and that the protests that happened, you think would be contained?
They are already contained.
Okay. What about finally privatization of railways? I know that you've gone on record saying that the Indian Railways belong to India, so there's going to be no privatization. In parts, perhaps, do you see that happen? Do you see private capital coming in when when it comes to the overall infrastructure development that the sector requires?
As I said, 20 million people are working in the railway sector, right? Out of that, 1.2 million are basically on the government roles. Rest of them are already in the private sector. That is first. Second part, if you look at the global experience, if it is a totally freight kind of railway which is there in the US, then it's a different matter, which is very isolated from the public. It doesn't require that kind of interaction with the people. Then it's a totally different story. But rest of the world, which is like the whole of Europe, which is UK, which is China, which is Southeast Asia, Japan, the role of government is very significant role in all these railroads, all these geographies. That is a situation which is similar to our situation. We believe that the role of government will remain predominant in the railway sector. It's a very, very complex industry, unlike highway or an airport where the infrastructure is basically isolated from the rest of the ecosystem. Railways is so deeply integrated, and I can speak more about it at some other occasion, but it's a very, very complex system. So it will remain within the government sector.